Hello everyone. I want to look at the teacher shortage in Mississippi, and an article has been released, and I want to just discuss and review this article and talk about this idea that there is a teacher shortage in Mississippi and where we're going to go in the future if we continue with a shortage. This article is called Understanding the Nature of the Teacher Shortage in Mississippi. There's not many articles about teacher shortage in Mississippi, so I thought this is just going to be great to read. So we'll go from here. The first introduction talks about that there is this decades of research have led to indications that the United States education system could be facing a major national teacher shortage. And I don't know if there's a national teacher shortage because every state deals with its own education system, and they can, like for example, Denver and California and other states usually increase their pay or they'll increase their compensation rates so that they can have to reduce a teacher shortage. Mississippi recently hasn't really done much of that, so let's look at that. So this first paragraph says, recent research on K-12 education workforce indicates that many schools in the United States still suffer from an insufficient number of teachers. So yes, that is true. Right here it says rural schools may also struggle to retain teachers. Teachers in rural communities, particularly those from other areas who are newcomers in rural schools, may struggle to adapt to the rural realities. Rural teachers may experience social isolation and cultural differences. We see that a lot, especially people who go from Meridian or Starkville or Oxford to the Delta, because those areas are very rural and socially isolating. Teachers in rural schools are often required to wear many hats, teaching many different subjects, or with significant extracurricular demands. I'm going to show you a video of a superintendent who's also having to teach.
They're conjugates, right? A plus and a minus.
Terry Deloria has a doctorate in educational leadership. She is the superintendent of the Jefferson Union High School District in San Mateo County. And this school year, she's adding another title to her resume. Math teacher, period 1.
It's our integrated math series, so it's math course 2, so we're finishing up beginning algebra, finishing up some geometry, and starting into some trig stuff.
Does anyone at your table have x squared minus 7?
Dr. Deloria, known as Dr. D to her students, stepped into period 1 when the original teacher for this class quit in October for a higher paying job. 4 other math teachers at Terra Nova High School in Pacifica volunteered to give up their prep period and fill in for the 4 other classes. The job was posted, but the district had 0 applicants.
So that's why I'm teaching the class. We don't have enough math teachers.
Jefferson Union High School District has 5 schools and adult education classes in Pacifica and Daly City. San Mateo County is one of the most expensive places to live in the U.S., and being a teacher will not make you rich. In fact, starting teachers at Jefferson Union make between $49,550 to $51,409. According to a recent survey by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, you need to make $124,840 a year to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in San Mateo County. You do the math, and it just doesn't add up.
So I'm still renting and I'm struggling. It's a challenge for me to come up with my rent money. It's almost 40% of my take-home pay.
Marlene Gutierrez has taught at Terra Nova High School for 18 years. Because of the high cost of living, teachers in Jefferson Union are oftentimes forced to live in less than ideal situations, like having several roommates, commuting from faraway places, or even working a second job.
You're not just tired physically, you're tired emotionally and mentally, and you want to prepare new lessons, you want to prepare engaging lessons. How can you do that if you have to hurry to your next job?
Jefferson Union says they've recently started to lose 1 out of every 5 teachers every year. The revolving door is impacting the students' education.
Well, we spend our energies and resources in other areas rather than working on improving things in the classrooms.
Finding math and science teachers is especially difficult. More chemistry teachers will be needed at Terra Nova next year. 3 math teaching positions remain open in the district. And if the statistics hold, 20% of the teachers in Jefferson Union will leave this summer.
They may go somewhere else, they may leave the state, they may leave the profession altogether.
Leaving the profession has become easier here in the Bay Area because of the high demand for workers with college degrees.
All right, so the stretch between a national teacher shortage and a Mississippi teacher shortage, I find is very difficult to make because what I previously said, that is there a nationwide teacher shortage? Really, there isn't. And the reason is every state controls their own education system. So while states like New York City may have a teacher shortage, states like Virginia may say, we're doing fine. So nationwide, I think it's harder to make that argument. But we do have a Mississippi critical need. And other states as well have it. And you'll see those in the paper where they say, so-and-so states are going on strike and so-and-so states have shortage issues, because it's an individual state issue. So let's look at Mississippi, because this is where the article really is very strong. The Mississippi's critical need says that there's 47 districts with critical teacher shortages. Mississippi defines a critical shortage district as those with 60 or more teaching positions that have 10% of their teaching staff not properly licensed for the subject they are teaching. So what does that mean? Mississippi allows people who are not certified in an area to receive certification in that area through what's called a good citizenship license, which also has been known as an emergency certificate. They used to call them those, and so now they call it a good citizen license. How this would work is, if a school district needs a science teacher and they don't have a science applicant, they would end up asking the state in a document, can we allow a teacher to receive a certification who's not in that area? They have to demonstrate to the MDE that they have tried to find a certified teacher and that they could not find one. And they have to also demonstrate that the person who will receive the license, the emergency license, will make steps towards receiving a full-time license. I'm going to now show you a map or a list of all the critical needs areas. This comes from the Mississippi Critical Teacher Shortage Act, which was passed a couple of years ago. And what it argues is that if an area has a critical shortage, then we will receive financial benefits. Now, these include a free college if you agree to teach in these areas. So it's also known as the Mississippi Teacher Fellowship Program, which you can enroll at other universities. And what happens is, if you're working on a master's degree, then you can apply for the MTFP if you agree to teach in a critical shortage area for, I think, 2 years. Some of y'all may actually be doing this because there are some school districts. It used to be just the Delta. The Mississippi Delta has a very critical needs area. And so you'll see that Benton County, that's in there. That's not in the Delta. Cleveland's in it. They're in the Delta. The Delta is the region. Everyone knows where the Delta is. That's by the Mississippi River. The old saying was the Delta was from the lobby of the Peabody in Memphis, which is a hotel, to the to the bluffs of Natchez, which that's really not it. Memphis is not the Delta because not a critical needs area. I would say the Delta would be south of Olive Branch, going to Grenada, and then stretching to Vicksburg area. So there's really no set definition of the Delta. So this is the list of all the places known as the shortage area school districts. You'll notice Meridian's on there. Meridian Public, if you actually are a teacher at Meridian Public, you can receive a free master's degree under the critical shortage area. And Kemper County is on there. All right, so that's how that works. And let me go ahead and pause it and switch over. All right, I did a quick pause. So those are the 47, right here it says there's 47 districts with critical teacher shortages as of 2014. They actually change every year, they redefine those. So, in order to understand the teacher shortage phenomenon in Mississippi, it is necessary to understand the context. All right. Like other areas of the nation, within Mississippi, there is a out of migration from non-metropolitan to suburban metropolitan areas. All right. This is read demonstrated by looking at data from Mississippi Development Authority. And what they're saying is that people do not want to live in the Delta. For example, DeSoto County experienced a 127.87% increase in the population at the same time that Sharkey County, a rural county in Mississippi Delta, lost 21.3%. I'm going to pull up a map of Mississippi to better explain this. So this would be a geographical map of Mississippi, which doesn't really show elevation. But if we look at Mississippi, we see several things. I'm going to teach us like you really don't know Mississippi. So I'm from here. Okay. Full disclosure, I am born above Mississippi in a place called Selmer, Tennessee. I was born there because that's where my mother's doctor was from. But I was then raised in this area right here, which is called Northeast Mississippi. So 42 years in Mississippi. This area right here is known as the hills of Mississippi. There's a geographical term for that. But Mississippi had three major Native American tribes who settled Mississippi, the Chickasaws, the Choctaws, and the Natchez. This would be known as Chickasaw area. And the Chickasaw area was full of hills, and it had some major rivers there. We have some major cities in northeast Mississippi. We have Tupelo, Corinth, which was a railroad town, and Oxford, which is over here in the middle of nowhere, but that's where Oxford is. All these other smaller towns are just pretty much towns that historically have either grown up on the railroads or just been developed. So northeast Mississippi doesn't have a great difficulty on attracting large numbers of teachers because you have major cities in these areas. As we move towards the west, we see a major city here, and that is, of course, Memphis is here. So Memphis has a very large population. As you scroll to the the central northern part of Mississippi, we have a town known as Grenada. Grenada is here. Grenada it's on the interstate, this major road that goes from Memphis to New Orleans. Actually, it goes to Chicago to New Orleans. But that's a major interstate that we have here. So Grenada is a very well developed. To the right of Grenada would be Starkville. And then in this area, we do have critical areas such as Kemper County because there's not much development in this area. As we scroll down, we see the Queen City, which is Meridian, which was known as the Queen City because it was always the second largest city in Mississippi, behind the King City, which is Jackson. Of course, Meridian no longer is the Queen City. It just still holds that name. It's no longer the second largest. As you go to the southern part of the state, we have Hattiesburg. Hattiesburg is in between the coast and Jackson and Meridian. It's a well-developed town. And then, of course, we have the coastal here, which really runs its own economy, basically. The coast has a very strong economy from tourism and shipping. And so they do very well down here. As we scroll to the left, we see one of our oldest cities, Natchez, over here on the Mississippi River, which really controls the Mississippi River controlled our state's finances with shipping. As you scroll up, you go into what's known as the Delta. That is the area between Jackson and Memphis in this area right here. That would be our geographical boundary that causes us some major poverty issues. So let's talk about why this area is poor. The one reason why the Mississippi Delta is poor is because of the flooding. Before 1920s, 1930s, Mississippi this entire area would flood, full of cypress trees, and people would go fishing out here. The Mississippi River historically flooded a lot. So this area it flooded a lot. So after the 1920s, Mississippi embarked on what became known as the Mississippi Levee System, which was a huge levee that goes all the way down the Mississippi River that prevents flooding. It was very successful, but in doing so, it created the world's second richest land, and that is the Mississippi Delta. It has huge amount of rich topsoil because the water that flooded receded over hundreds of years, which caused sediment growth. And now that it no longer floods, that sediment has dried out. It's become very good topsoil. For example, in North Mississippi, you'd be lucky to have 3 to 6 inches of topsoil. And in the Delta, you have 3 feet of topsoil. So land here is very expensive. And because of that, land has been bought up by huge farms. And there's huge farms in the Delta which pay very small amounts of property taxes. And because they're considered farms, they're exemption for farms. So the Mississippi Delta has a very large farming area. Now, of course, in the 1920s to the 1930s, people would always farm out here and it looked like it was sharecroppers and people really farmed. But by the 1970s, mechanization comes in and machines start moving in. So we start having what's called the Great Migration from the 20s to the 70s. That is when African Americans leave the Mississippi Delta area and they move to areas like Chicago, which had factories. What has been left over are people who have decided not to leave over many generations in pockets of poverty. People who've decided to stay in Mississippi where there's not many jobs in the Delta. So the Mississippi Delta is in need of major jobs, but they don't have them. And with that backdrop, we have people trying to have schools and bring in quality teachers. So if you look at this map right here, if you decide to move to Greenville, Mississippi, your local cities would be, the major hubs of cities would be Grenada, because there's no major city in the Delta except for Cleveland maybe. And then the next connection will be Jackson. So just talking to you from my example, when I lived in Cleveland, which is right here, Cleveland, we were approximately 2.5 hours from Memphis. We were 2.5 hours from Jackson. And we were a good hour and a half from Grenada. So it's this idea that you're stuck out there. And you really are out there in the Delta. It's a different world. The Delta's a different world. And that's one reason why they have a difficulty attracting teachers. All right, so that gave you an idea of the geography of it. So I'm going to switch back to the article now. And it says that in order to understand the teacher shortage phenomenon, it talks about cultural differences. So you see now, instead of this article does this huge section on, it talks about different areas of Mississippi and how people move, and like Adams County has negative growth. Well, now me being from Mississippi, I gave you a better understanding with that map, why people leave the Delta. Just a complete personal story so everyone can see what this is like. When I was up in North Mississippi and I moved from Oxford to the Delta, people told me, they were like, you'll want to get out of there. And I thought, man, I'm from Mississippi. I can live anywhere. And there was just nothing to do in the Delta. There's nothing to do at all. We had a local Walmart. We all hung out there. And there's nothing. So you meet some of the richest people you've ever met. And you also see some of the poorest people you've ever met. It's a completely different world out there when there's a lot to do where I was from and nothing to do out there except just talk to people. You got to talk to people and meet people and enjoy conversations, but wow, it's a different world out there. So then I moved to Meridian, and it's a completely different world in Meridian. There's more stuff to do. When you say there's nothing to do, what I mean was we didn't have a skating rink for children. We had a movie theater, but it was an hour away. Stuff like that. It's like, wow. So, all right. So, of course, the statewide figures obscures, it talks about this. So you can see the breakdown of different counties and also median income. They talk about there's a money difference. So they did a methods research where they looked at to understand the teacher shortage problem in Mississippi in order to provide policymakers with the knowledge necessary to develop. They did an analysis. They looked at predictor variables and all those elements. So let's look at their conclusion, because we don't want to get bogged down in the statistics. And I'll say it right here. It says, according to the model, the teacher shortage in Mississippi is a function of race, geography, and local funding. However, race accounts for 4 times more than geography when attempting to predict teacher shortages. In other words, if a district is in or near the Yazoo Mississippi River Delta region, which is the Delta, it may experience a teacher shortage, and the odds of facing a shortage are 4 times more likely if the district has a percentage of black students significantly higher than an adjacent school district. So they play a major issue with race is that. And one reason is because they said it's mainly for the Delta. It's the Delta. So they keep pointing towards the Delta in this entire article. One thing I disagree with, which I don't see where they did not discuss this at all. It says local funding. They tried to make a connection that less taxes meant a higher teacher shortage. The state of Mississippi actually sends a lot of money, state money, to the Delta schools, which they did not look at here. So that'd be a good article for the next, if someone wanted to continue with this research, was to look at state funding of the Mississippi Delta and see how that works, see how much each school district is getting. So is money a major issue? They're saying that race is a major issue. The percentage of black students are adjacent school districts. Let's see, look right here. Though race is by far the biggest predictor of whether or not a district is a shortage district, geography also is a very strong predictor. The districts with the teacher shortages are generally clustered in a region of Mississippi known as the Yazoo Mississippi Delta. These counties are experiencing population outgrowth at astonishing rates, which means people are leaving the Delta. So our Mississippi Delta region actually has a very skewed racial number, which means it's a very large black population living in the Delta, and also has a very high number of people leaving. We're actually seeing negative population growth in our Mississippi Delta. The reason is outside this research article. I'll tell you why. There's no jobs. There's no jobs in the Mississippi Delta. And if you talk to young black children in the Delta, which I did a lot, they'll tell you, I'm going to Memphis, I'm going to Chicago, and they'll always use this phrase, I'm getting out of here, because there's nothing to do here. That's the thing. So while Mississippi as a whole has experienced a 14% growth, the rural Delta counties are being drained of people with the negative consequences. Drained. Schools are financed through accommodation. This article is just a really, really strong article. Look at this. Shortage as a function of race. North Pike, 30% African American. Teacher shortage, no. South Pike, 83%, yes. North Panola, 97%, yes. So you start seeing race as a major predictor. Many of the districts with shortages spend more money per pupil than those districts without teacher shortages. So they did look at state funding, which I saw. They didn't really break down the numbers, though. These three factors, race, geography, and local revenue, are very hard to address. Previous efforts to address teacher shortage in Mississippi have included incentives to teach in critical shortage areas, alternate route, and increasing teacher quality. They are important efforts and should not be discounted, it says. So conclusions and future directions, you can look at all kinds of different research. So what this article has shown us is three things. One thing, geography is a major factor in Mississippi in their teacher shortage area. Why is geography a major area? If you look at this research article, it kind of points towards race, which is not really true. There's no jobs out there. Second thing is race is a major issue in teacher shortage. They're saying that if you see a school district that has a very high African American population, you're going to have a teacher shortage, likely. Okay? Well, why is that? Well, socioeconomic status. Money is a big issue. The third thing, which is really not really as strong, is local revenue, local tax base, because the state is also supplementing the money in the Delta. So are the school districts spending as much money as they can? So that's when you look at the finances of each school. Now, I'm going to end this article with, it's a 20-minute clip. You can watch this on your own if you wish. It's part of the Mississippi Teacher Fellowship Corps, which is where they take regular people with 4-year degrees in anything, and they do an alternate route program where they let them go teach in a critical needs area. You can watch this video as you wish, but it's interviews, and they interview these people who went into the schools for 2 years and they taught in critical needs areas, and they'll give you, you can see all their different feedbacks and how they change, and it gets real to them because they taught in critical needs areas. So you can watch that on your own, but I want to show you I just want to have a discussion on teacher shortage because it's big in Mississippi, and they're trying to fix it, and they're trying to get more money to teachers, talking about pay raises. But even if they give a pay raise, let's say they start teachers out at $50,000, you're going to have that issue of, do I want to go teach in the Mississippi Delta? Do I want to go teach in a school district that It is isolated geographically when I can go teach for the same pay at another school. So we see that element as well. Of course, the benefit would be you get a free master's degree. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to, you can watch the next section on your own, which is just, it talks about interviews from people who have taught in critical needs areas.
My name is Anna Kuriakos. I'm from Paramus, New Jersey. I went to Amherst College, graduated with a degree in anthropology, and I'm going to be teaching high school math at Simmons High School in Hollandale.
My name is Christine Bro. I'm from Gonzales, Louisiana. It's in between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. I went to school here at Ole Miss. I had a degree in liberal arts. I will be teaching English, 9th grade English at Byhalia High School.
My parents are both were born and brought up in India, in a southern Indian state called Kerala. And I was born in New York, have been raised here, but I have gone back multiple times, and I've did part of my high school career in India as well.
My biggest fear is just classroom management issues, because I'm not really the type of person that will have the iron fist or, really implement a lot of rules. I like to kind of have a give and take relationship with my students, and I'm just worried about not implementing rules enough and then the classroom just turning chaotic.
I'm in a place that kind of very much still differentiates between black and white, and I don't really fit in either category.
People fighting, that's really a big fear of mine.
I really liked what one of my classmates said, having about her worst fear being getting her heart broken by her kids. That's really something that kind of struck a chord in me as well. Let's see. I hope you're still in the program.
Oh man. Pat on the back. Good job for sticking it out.
You were scared. You were really scared going into this, but I think you'll be okay. I think you'll come out on top. Not too worried about you.
It is February, is that right? And I've been teaching for, what is it, not 6 months?
How long have I been teaching? Does summer school count? No. When did we start school? I don't even know anymore.
7 months? I don't even know. 7 months? August, September, October, November, December, January, February. 7 months.
5 months? 4 months? August? 7 months? Is that right? It's been hard, but it's been an experience, to say the least.
It has been, I feel like I've experienced every possible emotion. I've been ecstatic at times. I've been completely overwhelmed and depressed and discouraged.
Hardest part about teaching. I think the hardest part is not believing that my students are getting anything out of my lessons.
Is that a trick question?
Well, I've had a student whose stomach was hurting a lot, and she had been throwing up all day, and she came to me and she was like, "Miss Bro, I think I'm pregnant." And I mean, I teach mainly 9th graders. This is a 14-year-old student coming up to me telling me that they think that they're pregnant. And especially in the South, I mean, you pretty much just have the kid and go on with your life. Like, there's really no other options for these children. And I mean, I don't have a child of my own, so it's hard to counsel somebody in that type of subject whenever you don't have the knowledge, really. It definitely is hard emotionally.
I feel like I've been the top of the world and just been in soul-crushing, depressing places in the span of half a year.
Do something else.
Go ahead and hit spacebar.
Let's see. I hope you're still in the program.
I am.
I mean, you were scared. You were really scared going into this.
Oh man. Pat on the back. Good job for sticking it out.
Good. Good advice to me. Pat on my back.
People fighting, that's really a big fear of mine. Did anyone fight in my class? Thank God, no.
I'm in a place that kind of like very much still differentiates between black and white, and I don't really fit in either category.
I was really nervous about not being black or white, and I had nothing to worry about.
I've never, it's kind of bad to say, but anytime anyone would start to sort of have a verbal argument, I'd break it up and I'd say, you know what, I don't care if you guys fight, just don't do it in my class.
Being Indian in the Mississippi Delta, it's funny because they tell you there's a lot of Indians here, and I haven't seen any. Maybe one at a gas station.
I don't know if outside of school they went and fought and did whatever, but as long as it wasn't around me and I didn't have to break it up.
It hasn't once come up in a negative way. It's come up a lot as just a question, you know, what you is. You must be mixed. I get that a lot. You must be mixed. And to this day, my kids still think I'm Kim Kardashian's cousin.
And it's one of those things, like, I look so highly up to my kids, and if they started fighting, I would be so mad at them just because they're disrespecting me in my classroom, and I think they know that.
This was just 2 days ago. I had a student, we were watching the news about the storms in the South, and a student looked at a clip of a tornado and said, that's really beautiful. And I said, yeah, that's one of the things about nature. It's, you know, it can be really beautiful, but really destructive. And then a girl thought for a minute and she said, oh yeah, you mean like rainbows? I thought that was great. The end of the year of the first year was probably the best part, just because you're just filled with a sense of pride for having finished and not quit. And, you know, you see your kids are still standing, you're still standing at the end of the first year. So I think the best part was the spring of the first year, but it feels pretty good now.
The hardest part of the 2 years probably were just some of the psychological issues that I had to deal with. I had a student who passed away last year, and it took a pretty big toll for both me and my students. I never really had anybody pass away that was so close to me and that I would see every day. And I had to take a mental day off, come down and talk to the counselor here, and he helped me through it, and he was able to help me guide my students through it as well.
Did I have to deal with any students dying? No. I didn't have to, thank God.
He actually died in a car accident. He was in the back seat and he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and he was ejected from the car and died immediately.
We had 2 rapes this past year. Well, one this year, one the year before. One was allegedly in the school building, and one was in the town where I teach, but not during school hours and not on the school campus. There was really no reaction from the adult population to the student population about it. There was no communication, there was no addressing it. People didn't talk about it. Everybody knew about it. They mentioned it, they talked, you know, quietly, but the students weren't, it just wasn't addressed as something wrong, as a crime, as, you know, a way a girl or boy shouldn't be treated. That was really hard. It took a long time for that girl to kind of assimilate back into school culture.
and she's doing okay, but you know, the perpetrator was caught and released.
One story, one of my honors kids, excellent kid, straight A student, just as polite as can be. She just came out this year that she's gay, and her mom found out that she had a girlfriend, and she would go home every day and her mom would try to beat the gay out of her. And it's just so sad because the shift in her attitude towards everything just changed drastically, and that was, she's doing much better now. That was kind of in Christmas time, but it was just so depressing because she's such a good kid.
A time that I just broke down, one comes to mind really vividly about teaching, and it wasn't really anything in particular. It was just I was in geometry class, I thought I'd prepped, you know, really well to teach a lesson, and I mean, I think I had. Kids really understood it. Test day came, and I was scoring, you know, grading those tests at home, and not a single kid passed. Not one student passed. And the devastating part about it was just that I thought they'd gotten it, and they hadn't. And so the only thing that told me was, you're not doing something right. If you walk out of a classroom and you think you've taught them something, and then they can't perform, they can't show you that they've got it, you're doing something wrong. So that was like the lowest moment of feeling incompetent that maybe I've ever felt. And it was worse than if I'd walked out of there knowing I hadn't taught them anything. I was just really convinced that they'd gotten it, and they hadn't.
What surprised me the most in the past 2 years? I think the lack of good teachers in school. I grew up with a public education in Louisiana, but I never had teachers who just let us sit in class and do nothing, and especially a math class that you're gonna need for the rest of your life, or a state test class. And it's just so surprising to me that these people they still have their jobs, even year after year, when they're not producing any type of results. And the kids are honest. I mean, they'll say, yeah, I go to math and I just sit there and we just hang out. Why can't we do that in your class? They're definitely stressful times, stressful days, but I never seriously considered quitting at all.
I thought about quitting pretty much every day of the first semester, I would say, into Thanksgiving break and Christmas break, but I don't think I would have let myself quit. I wasn't close enough to it that I really thought it would happen. I thought about it a lot. Thought about how much my life would be easier and what I would do. I mean, almost fantasized about it, but I think I just had too much pride. I started something, I didn't want to quit it, because that was really the only reason. I don't think anything else really kept me in it. It wasn't about the students, about the people, or the place at that time. It was just my own pride. I couldn't quit it because I'd started it.
What will I miss most about the Mississippi Teacher Corps? As hard as it is to say, I think I will miss these Saturday classes, because it's really the only time that we get to hang out as a class. And I think one thing that the Mississippi Teacher Corps does that's excellent is that, and I don't know if it's just because of the nature of this program, but we actually form a very strong bond, and that starts in summer school. And we're with each other for 2 years, and we see each other 7 Saturdays a semester. And it's refreshing to be able to talk about stories or share lesson plan ideas with people who know exactly what you're going through.
What will I miss most about the Mississippi Teacher Corps? I'm going to miss Mississippi. Really, the place and the people. I think you'll come out on top. Not too worried about you.
Yeah, I did.
That was really weird.
That was really strange.
Or people fighting, that's really a big fear of mine. Didn't happen.
That's weird. It's weird to watch me 2 years ago. I feel like it's a completely different person, even though those are the same answers I would give now. But most of them, I talked about myself, but
I'm just looking at her like, you were so young. Which is pathetic. What's my advice to incoming first years? Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't take things too personally. Don't judge yourself too harshly. And don't quit. Not unless it's taking a toll on your health or your well-being. But don't quit. Stick with it because it does get better. It's a beautiful, heart-wrenching, painful, wonderful, life-changing experience. I really liked what one of my classmates said, having about her worst fear being getting her heart broken by her kids. That's really something that kind of struck a chord in me as well. Oh, has my heart been broken? I don't think I could say it's been broken. I think it's been through a lot, but I don't think I can say it's been broken. But I haven't left yet, so there's still a chance. That's okay. Absolute value 3 inches.
Oh, you've been on a fast train, and it's going off the rail, and you can't come back again. And you start breaking down.
Where's that half
in the pouring rain.
You sure? No, you sure?
Oh, you've been on a fast train.
How do you know it's tiring?
Because it makes the pull away.
Well, your name's not tiring.
And your lover has gone away. Don't it make you feel sad? And you're going on a journey way into the land, and you start breaking down.
On statement one. One.
And you're jumping on. Yes, you're jumping on a fast train. Jumping on a fast train. Gotta go on the lam. Stuck in no man's land. Ain't nobody here on your way back. Ain't
So,
nobody
in this
gonna
case,
lend you a helping
They're telling me that
hand.
2 pi.
And you start breaking down, and you go to the sound, but you hear that fast train.
What is parallel structure? Jocelyn.
What sentences have similar elements that are presented in the same way?
Oh, excellent.
Off of this paper in that way.
My name is Jakia Starks, and I'm from Hollandale, Mississippi. Miss K is a good teacher. When she first came here, a lot of people thought that she was a little mean because of the way she looked. But then we got in her class, she showed us a fun way to learn, basically. And she's a good math teacher. I give her a lot of props on that. I like to tell Miss K she did a great job in teaching me math, especially trig and pre-calculus, because at first a lot of people said trig was hard, but to me she showed me a way that it's fun learning trig and pre-calculus. Continue to be a good teacher, continue to be fun and make people laugh, and go far in life, farther than this. So, that's it.
Moving on a fast train, well, way over the land. Next thing you're out of your mind, and you're out of your depth, and through the window she crept. Oh, there's nowhere to go in the sleet and snow. Just keep on moving. Ooh, on a fast train. Moving on a fast train. You got to go on the land.
My name is Keon Tunstall. What makes Ms. Burrow a good teacher is that she strives to do her best with all her students. She gets a special connection with all her students, and she makes the environment fun for learning, and she teaches the material in a way that we can understand. Yes, Ms. Burrow has a very great sense of style. She's always matching. She comes to school in bright colors to match her attitude, which is always a very bright and upbeat attitude. When I graduate high school, I plan on going to Mississippi State and majoring in English and being an English teacher. Since you're going to show this to Ms. Burrow, I would like to tell her thanks for all the knowledge that I have received in her class. I feel confident I'm going to pass the English 2 SAT and that I love her.
Cross the desert and sands. Keep on moving through the barren wasteland. Keep on moving. Moving kind of fast on a fast train. Keep on moving. Moving kind of fast, 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 fast on a fast train. Going nowhere fast. How long can it last on a fast train? Keep on moving. You're moving on a fast train. Keep on moving. Moving on a fast train. Somebody lend a helping hand. I can't understand. Going through this wasteland. I'm a crazy man. Lord, help me on a fast train. Fast, 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 fast train. Fast, 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 fast train. Keep on moving. On a fast train. Going nowhere.